Are you hopeful about Africa and the future of Africa?
I am very hopeful, but time is running out. If we don't fix corruption, it's costly, it's difficult. It is what you call moving against the wind as you try to win.
Why are you doing all this?
It doesn't really matter. You could be totally uneducated. What's your thinking? Can it be transformed? Yes. Are there examples? Yes. Every 12 months, it is time to get something better and better. And if you don't do it, you will be wiped out.
I mean, here in Uganda is the youngest population in the entire Africa, if not the whole globe. And by 2050, it's been estimated that Africa is going to be the driver of human capital across the globe.
A human being should cease trying to talk about their past or whatever they did.
Are Africans cursed? Once again, let me welcome you to the Religion and Enterprise Television. And as you know, our objective is very simple. We live in a continent where almost everybody on the continent seems to be religious, whether a Christian or a Muslim. And yet, when you look at the continent, we seem to be bedeviled with a lot of challenges. And one of the critical questions that people have asked is, are Africans cursed or not? Indeed, the former president of France, President Jacques Chirac, made a statement, and I want to quote him. He said, "We bled Africa for 4.5 centuries. We looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that the African is good for nothing. In the name of religion, we destroyed their culture. And after being made rich at their expense, we now steal their brains through miseducation, misdirection, and misinformation, as well as propaganda to prevent them from enacting black retribution against us." This is the statement made by the former president of France, President Jacques Chirac. Today, we are privileged to be having one of the most indigenous and industrious sons of the continent, who has seen it all. Started as a banker, but today, as we are talking, if you talk about enterprise development on the whole of the continent, this man stands tall among all the creative architects of enterprise development on the continent. And I'm not talking about any other person, but my good friend, my brother in East Africa, the country called Uganda, Mr. Charles Ocici. He's a man that I'm going to be introduced to you. And ladies and gentlemen, our objective is to explore to what extent business can play a critical role in promoting the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the Africa Agenda 2063, but looking at it from the standpoint of business, but also religion. And that is why we are here. My brother, Mr. Charles Ocici, it's a great honor and a privilege. Anytime I see you and I meet with you on platforms, summits, and so have you, I get excited. When I told my people you were coming, everybody was looking forward to seeing you because of the illumination you bring to the table. I've just read what Jacques Chirac said, and I'm sure you're familiar with his statement. He claims that they used religion to destroy us. What are your thoughts? And before you answer, please tell us a bit about who you are, so that the whole continent will know who this man I'm talking about is.
Well, as I speak to the continent of Africa, I must say that I've been very privileged in my career to have been able to see what it takes to see a micro enterprise become medium size, become cross-continental, and then become a brand that is known across the globe. So behind my career has been an exposure to the banking field, where I was in a domestic bank in Uganda. I rose to the stage whereby I was overseeing the biggest loan portfolio in the country at the time. Thereafter, I proceeded to a regional bank that is located and headquartered in Nairobi, called the PTA Bank. That bank goes across the entire continent of Africa. And in my sojourning in employment in that institution, I visited so many countries of Africa and saw what it takes to create an entrepreneur from whatever stage they are in to a big player globally. So as a professional, I've had a chance to work in the banking industry, but then I've also had a very deep opportunity to work in a career that I feel is much more fulfilling, and probably the kind of a job you can just say it's no longer about money, but the joy of seeing what comes out of what you do every day. And that's my job at Enterprise Uganda, an institution which is a part of the network of over 40 similar organizations started by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So I've been in Enterprise Uganda now for 22 years, and I've seen what it takes to transform a poor indigent person with no resources at all, a person that no bank could touch, to a person now that every bank would be wishing they could do business with.
Interesting. So let's explore a bit more about Enterprise Uganda, because the first day I walked into your area, I was fascinated. And then in recent time, just about a couple of weeks ago, when you and I were talking, and I saw the 3D of your building that you are putting up, I said to myself, is this man really an African? Because, I mean, most Africans don't do this. Most Africans would rather prefer they get all the money for themselves and all of that. But here you are thinking about a legacy. Yes. And I'll be showing you the building that through this month's effort, Enterprise Uganda has put up or is putting up, which is going to be outdoored by December. Yes. I mean, it's fascinating. Now, Charles, why are you doing all this? How did it begin?
When somebody wants to really occupy your space that God has created for you, you can go through 3 or 4 stages of your professional career. The first stage is go and get a job. A job is a limited thing with a contract with one employer. But if you remain in there, you can actually begin to talk about what we call protecting a job, getting more concerned and fearful about anybody who might come and take that job. But should you see that job as an entry to the next levels, the story changes. So the next level should be to move away from just protecting a job to protecting a career. A career now opens you to all opportunities to impact through so many entities and so many agencies. It's no longer one contract. But once you reach the space of a career, it's not just now about enjoying what you are doing. You should move to the next stage of having a calling. A calling now is something that drives you wherever you see a need for you to solve a problem. You are saying it's not about money, I want to go and be of a difference to that particular situation. And as you get to a point of achieving that aspiration of entering a space of a calling, there is the final stage of leaving a legacy. A legacy is something that lives beyond you. You've not only crafted your ability to transform society, you are now saying, don't just treat me only in the space of enterprise development. I want to just go to everything else that touches humanity and creates change. And you do that through institutions, through transferring your skills and your capabilities to other individuals. And that's why when we started Enterprise Uganda 22 years ago, we built the solutions that work. We have seen how those solutions work. We now feel that this is the right time for Enterprise Uganda to spread its wings and take this institution across the continent. And that's why the property that we shall be launching shortly will be the bedrock for us to anchor that ambition, that aspiration for us to go across the continent. And I feel we are very ripe and ready to get that to be done, because our legacy is the best space anybody can seek to be in.
I mean, if you have just joined us, I'm sure you are asking yourself, who is this man? Because, people of Africa literally sometimes don't speak the way my friend Ocici is speaking. This is a Religion Enterprise Africa TV, and our focus is simple. How do we bring religion, faith-based institutions into the center space as far as policy development and all of that are concerned? And to do so from the 7 pillars of society, business development is one of the critical elements of it. And that is what we are discussing today, talking to an expert in enterprise development as far as the continent is concerned. Charles, let me ask you a very plain question. Are you hopeful about Africa and the future of Africa?
I am. I am very hopeful, but time is running out. Why? I'm very hopeful because the continent of Africa, through what we have just done in 22 years, is ready for what I call genuine solutions that lead to lasting transformation. Many politicians will find it very difficult to work with a young person who votes for them because they have given the impression to the voter and the young person that I take care of you. And please, if you have any challenges, hand them over to me. And they have been frustrated. We have been able to tell people that the future of a human being does not lie in the hands of another one. And that short verse in the Bible, Proverbs 23:7, which says, as man thinketh in his heart, so is he, is always the signature entry point for our transforming the people that we meet. And almost without exception, every audience who have interacted with and given them that kind of a message, and then given the kind of examples and testimonies they have seen within their own environments, they begin to say, oh no, for long we have been walking in a dark spot. Somebody has been misdirecting us, telling us that, please wait for me, wait for me. The short statement is so powerful. As man thinketh in his heart, so is he. No other qualifications of saying, you are thinking, but you must be having a father. He says, it doesn't matter, you could be an orphan. You are thinking, but you must be having a degree. It doesn't really matter, you could be totally uneducated. What's your thinking? Can it be transformed? Yes. Are there examples? Yes. So that's why I'm very hopeful about the continent of Africa. It is now the ability to convey this message across the continent in that clear, unvarnished manner that makes the difference.
I'm listening to you and I'm asking myself, how many Africans are as optimistic as you are? And so I'm trying to understand what is the basis of your optimism. Because everybody seems to be complaining. Either they are blaming governments and what have you. And so sitting here, somebody is saying, well, Ocici, you can talk like that because you are wearing a nice tie, you have a nice suit, and as you said, you've been in this for 22 years. And has it all been rosy? And as you answer that question, Charles, to what extent do you see the world has changed? And if it indeed has changed, how do you interpret that changes that is sweeping across the continent? And what does that mean to the man or the young person or the business leader, the entrepreneur who is in the informal sector that you are saying, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And therefore can be as hopeful as you are as an African seated here. Because as you know, for many people, we are just a dark continent. So to what extent has the changes taking place in this world affected us, and what does it mean to us? And how does that help in the optimism that you have as you speak?
Emmanuel, you have asked very interesting questions, and I don't want to miss any of them.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to pick
one by one.
And if I've forgotten something,
sure,
please remind me. Let me just start by, again, what I can cite as an example to just tell us that we are seated at an opportunity as Africa.
Right.
Today, this is the continent that is having its citizens seeking to cross waters, board planes, sell their land to go to overseas countries outside the continent,
sure,
to get a living there. And many have sacrificed their lives to try and achieve that.
Right.
Your post is interesting. You see people from Southeast Asia coming to this continent with basically nothing but their bodies and their minds, and say, we are going to a continent where you do not need a lot of resources to begin and to scale. And indeed, within a very short time, you discover that somebody from Southeast Asia comes to Uganda, goes to East Africa, give him 2 years. He has moved from some rural setting and he has gone to a regional city. From a regional city, he has gone to the capital city. From a capital city, he's serving the entire country. And all he will tell you is it took him just the courage to get started. There are not many opportunities like those in the Western world. The Western world, you can go in there, you can think, you can try and get started. The limitations are too many. Most opportunities have been tapped into, and tapped into on a big scale. So to break through there, very hard. the barrier of entry in Africa is great. And once you have gotten started, the opportunity to serve a population that can consume with what you have started with, they are not yet too sophisticated. The population is big. So that's your population to start off from. But from there, you can go to a more sophisticated population, and then you can begin to export. So just that scenario where you are seeing the reverse. Others are entering to Africa with no capital, the way we know it. And Africans are selling capital and selling land to go to the other side to become laborers. Tells a story about the continent of Africa. And all we need to do is to just rethink about the continent of Africa and begin to see what those fellows from Southeastern Asia come here to do. They have no language, no contacts, no knowledge. Even their religion is different, but they come to this continent and just say, this is a paradise. Now, your question, next question was that, really, is this something that has happened? The stories of over 180,000 customers of Enterprise Uganda speak to the validity of this assertion. We've had individuals who were in internally displaced camps because of the wars in Uganda. And then they lost education, they lost parents, both mom and dad. And then the war ends and the person is told, go back to your original land. And the fellow has only his energy plus a bushland. But they come for this training, that changes the mindset. The young man moves from a person who was lamenting about lack of education, loss of parents, to today earning no less than, in a year, $500,000. He's 31 years. And he has bought land of his own over 600 acres. He is planting acreages in excess of 100 acres for soya beans. A person starting with just his own energy to dig a fish pond and start selling and then go into other enterprises. These stories illustrate on the viability of the continent to give everyone a standing chance to take off. The only thing is we need to refocus on changing the mindset of our people. It is not by accident that that verse was put in the book of Proverbs. Yes.
Now, it's amazing. And again, I go back to the issue of optimism, because whenever I hear you speak, and I've picked this from quite a number of people who attend our summits, they said the question they always ask, why can't we replicate this man across the whole continent? Because he does not only seem to know what he's talking about, but the enthusiasm that comes along with it, which is key. Now, Charles, my next question to you is, you mentioned some of the opportunities that we find in Africa. Are there some critical challenges as well that in your interaction with a lot of these entrepreneurs that you have groomed from the scratch up to here, you've talked about the mindset, which means we need a paradigm shift. Beyond the paradigm shift, beyond the mindset, beyond all those, are there some other critical challenges that as Africa prepares for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? And I'm asking this question against the backdrop of the fact that majority of our SMEs are in the informal sector. Correct. What are some of the critical challenges that you've identified? And what do you anticipate to be the solutions that we can provide to these businesses? And this is important because the SMEs are the bedrock of the economies of Africa. So what are the challenges? And from your experience, what are some of the recommended solutions that you can provide to our SMEs?
For Africa to burst out and occupy the space that is ripe, three things must be addressed. I've talked about the business mindset. That's very difficult. It's easier said than done. Because a business mindset is seen from the way you change your actions the next day. How many programs in Africa today exist that make a young man who has been idle and totally listless and saying, I'm finished, to wake up in the morning and just say, I lost time. I lost time, I should have done this before. So we need powerful, realistic business mindset solutions that can change a person from a despondent human being to a person who says, I'm living in the best of times. But that's number one. Number two, you also need to work on the environment where these people operate. Because the environment where our people operate has got a lot of other limitations. One of them is corruption. Corruption that can make the environment totally unleveled. You are trying to pay your taxes according to the law. Somebody is circumventing the taxes, and that gives you competition challenge. You are trying to make things go the way they are supposed to do by delivering quality as specified in the label that you are putting on your product. Somebody puts that label, but the content is different and it's adulterated. But corruption allows him to be in the market space. If we don't fix corruption, it's costly, it's difficult. It is what you call moving against the wind as you try to win. Because the fellows who have got the money and are able to buy the corrupt leadership are going to make it very tough for this genuine entrepreneur who says, I want to think long term. This is my continent. I'm going to succeed here. And I must succeed with honesty. So the continent has got a challenge of its environment in terms of corruption. It has got some challenges in terms of efficiency of public systems, where you can move in and take sometimes forever to clear your goods when you have imported items. Right. All those kind of things, inefficiencies, corruptions, they hinder the opportunities I've just talked about. But even when you deal with all those things, the third thing that we need Africa to embrace today is having technical skills, whichever space you go into. In other words, the days of producing anything that just works are over. Anybody today must realize that the competition has become so powerful that you don't need to see your competitor in your neighborhood or even in your country. A competitor is serving your market space, but is doing it from Singapore. He's serving your market space and is doing it from Korea. And if you cannot have the skills and the technology to match that kind of a competition today, you're in trouble. So technology, technical skills, ability to keep on sharpening and improving. You know, Africa, we used to get used to, when you have a grinding mill, the stone there's one stone on the ground, and then there's a small one on top. You use that one as technology to work forever. Those days are finished. If it worked yesterday, what can you do to make the thing grind a tin within 30 minutes? But we have used the working thing to grind a tin over 2 days, and you continue like that. That's not the world today. The iPhone 3, the iPhone 2, when it came out, it was like, that's the end of innovation. What else can you improve? We are now on iPhone 15. 16 is coming. Every 12 months, it is time to get something better and better. And if you don't do it, the computer is doing it. You will be wiped out. So Africa needs to quickly deal with the mindset and get people to change and drive themselves and open the doors themselves and go out there and compete. Number two, give them the technical skills and let them acquire the technical skills as well as the technology. And whenever people hear the word technology, they think of a lot of money. There are a lot of functional technologies that can be accessed within the reach of anybody interested to access them. And then, of course, the environment that comes from our leadership and our governance of our own economies in Africa.
I mean, these three key things you have mentioned is extremely important. But I don't want us to belabor the point of the mindset. I want us to dwell a little bit more on the inefficiencies and the corruptions and also the technology, or could you put it, innovation. Let me take you to the corruption bit. In Africa, when we hear corruption, we are always targeting politicians, people in power, people in government, and all of that. Now you are telling us that even within business, the entrepreneur can be corrupt. And that can militate against the growth of enterprise development on our continent, which will invariably affect the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that we are talking about here. Charles, can you drum home a little bit? Give us some, you've given us some already in terms of invoicing and all of that. What are some of the other elements of corruption that the entrepreneur in Africa need to pay attention to? But before you do that, if you have just joined us, this is a Religion and Enterprise television. And we are exploring how religion or faith-based institutions can help us address some of the pertinent challenges that we find on our continent, particularly from business standpoint. And today we are privileged to be engaging one of the most, creative business development experts on our continent, who has built Enterprise Uganda from scratch for more than 2 decades. And from his wealth of experience and expertise, telling us, sharing with us some of the things that he has observed over these 2 decades. And here we are centering on technology, innovation, and corruption, not from political sphere, but from the business environment. Charles, please educate us. Educate the 1-point-something billion Africans who want to go into entrepreneurship, who are already in business, what it means for the businessman to also be corrupted.
Let me put it this way. If you're in business, you've got stakeholders that you must make happy to work with you. It is almost inconceivable to deliver a solution 100% on your own. You need suppliers. You need your financiers. You need a government system that supports you. You also need a good human resource. All these areas here, you must be able to handle them with honesty. But do you know that you can have issues with your suppliers and begin to come up with some shoddy ways of doing things? You are supposed to do a paving of a given road. And it is in the bidding document that you gave in to win that job, you specified the kind of thickness of the pavers and the kind of hardness of that paver. You now work with your suppliers and say, you know what, don't mind. You are the one going to supply me these pavers, but you just reduce the quality of the cement. So long as the volume is there, just bring me that one. They will not notice. After all, a paver can take about 4 or 5 years before you can notice that's a bad paver. That is corruption. The supplier will now lower the price at which they are supplying you that item so that you execute that assignment. But the truth is, you've cheated on what you promised to do. And it's a matter of time, somebody will discover that a road that was done by company A has taken much longer than a road that was done by you. Because when you're dealing with your suppliers, an element of corruption was prevailing. We also go in and try to think that we can go and corrupt a banker. A banker is telling you that we will not lend to you to refinance a bad loan somewhere. You go and tell him, please don't bring this up in your analysis and when you're taking my application for approval. Just say I'm going to use it for expanding my hotel. So please let my application be reading expansion of the hotel. You and the bank officer have just done something extremely dangerous for your own good. But it's a corrupt issue. You have told that officer to break the rules so as to give you money, and you do something which is not consistent with what they would have otherwise done. Extremely dangerous. Similarly, you may find that you've had a restaurant and you had a huge occasion where you're entertaining people who attended a wedding. Some food remained. Some of the food is getting into a bad state. But you don't want to say, give it to now a level where it can be consumed, either it's for piggery or it's for something else. You still want it to be consumed by human beings, and then you leave the price as if it is fresh food. That's a work ethic issue. It is something on corruption is still. You are picking this money corruptly. You are picking this money without value for what you have delivered. So these are elements that we need to begin to drive in as Africa, where you yourself, you are the first evaluator of what you are doing and asking yourself, if I were the one consuming this thing, would I be happy to take it? Would I come back again the next day because I enjoyed what I ate? Would I recommend my own friends and relatives to come and consume the same item? If you put in yourself in that kind of a space, then you have taken care of that concept called customer care. Because customer care is about repeat business. It's about good referrals. It's about happy referrals coming in and giving you more ideas. But you chose to take the short route to access an easy resource. And then you pay the price. That's why it will be very difficult to get what we call cross-generational brands in our continent. But these things are doable and they can be done because at Enterprise Uganda, we have seen it happen.
I was coming back to these cross-generational brands that you have mentioned because I think that's another thing that we need to look at. If you look at Africa, talk of the brands like Barclays, Standard Chartered, and ABSA, Stanbic Bank, and all of those people. These are brands that have lived for more than centuries.
Nobody even knows how they started. We just know that this is MTN, let me just go there. This is ABSA, let me just go there, you know?
So my question is, now if you look at it carefully, Charles, available statistics indicate that all Africa is a youthful population. Here in Uganda is the youngest population in the entire Africa, if not the whole globe. And by 2050, it's been estimated that Africa is going to be the driver of human capital across the globe. Now we are talking about ethical issues, we are talking about skills, we are talking about that. Are you concerned about the future for Africa from that standpoint? And what must we do? Businesses start and overnight they collapse. And if you go into it critically, and I'm sure from your experience you know, it's not because of the financing that people have been hammering all the time.
Correct.
What are the issues? And if we are going to provide labor for the entire world, from your standpoint, what are the critical things that need to be addressed? Earlier you mentioned technical skills and all of that. What other issues do you foresee Africa needs to do to make us indeed the supplier of labor for the world by 2050?
You know, the moment you've crossed from being a young person still at college and you are now into the world of adults, a human being should cease trying to talk about their past or whatever they did in the past. They should now be saying, what value am I going to give?
So can you repeat that statement?
I hope I will pick the same word.
Yes,
because these words are just coming out.
You see, I'm asking you to explain that because
yes,
you have people who have finished university.
Yes.
They've stayed home for more than 3-4 years without
Yes.
a job.
Yes.
And all they are doing is blaming the government,
Yes.
blaming their parents.
Yes.
If my parents have given me money to study abroad, I would have been better than where I am. If my government has done A, B, C, D, I would have been better. Now you are telling us that once we finish university and we go into adulthood, we must forget about our past.
Yes.
Why must we?
Because the person you are going to meet and has got a resource to spend is not going to spend because you got a degree or because you belong to a certain family or you were in a certain club. They are simply saying, I am looking for good eggs because next week I've got visitors coming from Accra and I want very good eggs. And do you know how they walk to the place where eggs are being sold? They first concentrate on looking on the different types of eggs. And then after that, they now say, who is selling these eggs? In other words, value for money is what the world is looking for. The moment you begin to see the principle of saying that you should give much more than what you receive in payment to the world and add value to the world, at that point, you begin to open a door that is too wide, and you even wonder why for so long you have not seen that door. In other words, even a young man who is still looking for a job, you must be asking, why did I do accounting? Does accounting require me to first do an interview with a company with a label somewhere at the gate saying, this is MTN? Or does accounting mean that there is somebody with a cottage farm in your neighborhood, probably place a grocery where you have been buying some grocery items, and their books are not quite smart, and you can start from there. The moment that one person says, do you know what you have just told me? You have made me discover that there are some people who have taken my items and they have taken so long to pay me back. Young man, thank you for saving me the thing. I have been always running to borrow from a bank, forgetting that I should have been collecting my own money. I'm going to pay you for this. That grocery owner has another friend, another relative with a similar need, and it's going to give a word of mouth to that person. The next assignment you are going to get, you don't need to do much promotion. You don't need to bargain so much about the price for your services because a happy customer has done that for you. There is no better promoter or marketer than a happy customer when you have got solutions. So in reality, Africa should begin to see that the world of adults is about value addition and being able to compete with any other person who could be delivering a similar solution in your space.
So in terms of preparing us for 2050, where our youthfulness and therefore being the supplier of labor to the rest of the world. I want you to look at it from the standpoint of skills development as well. You talked about attitude. But if we are going to be suppliers of labor to the rest of the world, from where you sit, as a banker, as an expert in enterprise development, what must this, our young population, do?
There are just a few things that a young population must begin to appreciate. And these things are really what you call, they demystify and write off many of the things we use to justify why we are not employed. Right. The moment your work ethics are so good that any assignment we give you, you do it way beyond what was expected. You've started a journey for many more assignments to come your way. The moment you are told that deliver this thing within the next 7 hours and you deliver it in 4 hours, not by mistake, but by deliberate planning and preparation. And the solution reflects what would have come after 7 hours. Timekeeping. Africa is completely a bad abuser of that resource.
Why?
If
because
we just fix that resource.
But you just, when I know we have our own time, we call it African time.
That's the way the problem arises. A customer in Africa is the very first one to say, why have you delayed to bring my food? Mm-hmm. He's in Africa, where they say this African time. He will never want to hear that. Try and go to a restaurant, and then they tell you, you have made your order, and then you are saying, I need my food within 30 minutes. As it is coming to 5 to 30 minutes, end of that period, somebody is already saying, where is this waiter? He promised my food. This is in Africa. If there's something that distinguishes a person from another one very, very quickly, one of them is keeping time. The other one is keeping promises. You promised to pay me on 31st of July. As you make that promise, I also now promise my other customers that, you know what, you come on the 1st of August, I will be paying off these debts. And then you go and tell the master at the school that, please, Mr. Master, in the first week of August, I'm bringing the school fees. The fellow who made a promise for 31st of July does not even call you back and say, unfortunately, this promise cannot work out, and I want you to now consider another date. It is you to call the fellow and say, by the way, today is the 2nd. You told me 31st. I've given you 1st and 2nd. You've not called me. If we can fix timekeeping, fix this promise issue, we are so careless in throwing promises.
Charles, I mean, I want you to look at this, from at the macro level, because these issues are very critical. Correct. And if indeed Africa is going to be the future of the world, and enterprise development is critical. Yes. How dangerous are these elements that you have highlighted? Time, keeping time and keeping our word. Yes. How dangerous it is. Can that undermine us as a continent?
In the world of competition and where technology is everywhere, those two are just the barest minimum. You cross that line, you have crossed that's just the commodity level, it's a given. When anything is at the commodity level, it's a given. Don't even blink your eye about it. To say that it was raining, that's why I could not prepare enough fruits and put them on a truck and deliver to you. Nobody wants to hear. Whatever happened, the rain, whatever burials you had, and you wanted to attend a burial for 2 weeks like you normally do, that's up to you. You promised me to deliver this thing on a particular date. Promises grow in multiples. You make one promise, it creates several other promises elsewhere. If you crack that one thing, nobody will give you that contract again, no matter how good your price is. And the beauty, the challenge today is competition is ferocious. Whatever you did so well, we can all try and copy that. But these two things here might make you to be outstanding, and you can outclass your peers. And then the good thing about these two is you don't even need to go to a bank to borrow a loan to be a good timekeeper. You don't need to go to a bank or to a reverend and just say, pray for me today that I might be able to make better promises. These are issues that you must begin to take care of. We do not want explanations in business deals.
Charles, I am feeling a bit jittery in my seat And why am I jittery? Because you see, you are bringing out some very fundamental humanistic issues to a continent that you have 99% being religious. Either they are in the church or they are in the mosque. Keeping of time, keeping my word. These are ethical principles. So I am asking myself, if you have a continent that 99% are religious, and as you know, even from Jacques Chirac's statement, they say that to be an African is to be religious. That means if you are an African, chances are that you either go to church or you're in the mosque or you have some sort of religious inclination in you. Now you are talking about some of the fundamental issues that has brought us back. Being timekeeping, keeping our word, and I'm sure there are a lot more that you can add. So my question to you is, does religion have any role to play in our attempt to become the future of the world as a continent? Please take your time and illuminate us. I mean, just educate us on this. Give us those insightful.
The first part where you get religion really making things to come out and tell all of us that when you go to make financial independence in this planet, whether you're in Africa or anywhere else, it is important for you to be able to earn resources that are sustainable. If you're in Africa and you have been earning your sustenance through handouts, trouble. Ecclesiastes 10:19 says that when you go for a party, you laugh. When you taste wine, you become merry. But it concludes by saying, but money answers everything. In other words, there's something central about money. You can see the but came in the middle as they are completing the last part. The others were flowing casually. Then when the final one came, it says, but money. It answers everything. The day Africa begins to earn money on merit at the marketplace, it will have answered all its problems, its troubles, and all its pain. If Africa does not learn,
So let me clean it.
if Africa does not learn how to earn money and also be able to now donate to the wanting nations, we're in trouble. Trouble. Because without money, first of all, your values, your ethics can be compromised. Without money, we can even come and tell you how to vote. Without money, we will even tell you that, please, next year, can you make sure that you put a section for this kind of a population that's coming to your country? So money gives you that muscle, that power, that staying stability to be yourself. Now the same book is saying somewhere in a Proverbs chapter 6 verse 6, it says, go to the black ant, you lazy person, and become wise. Because a black ant will wake up in the morning and does not need a supervisor, a ruler, to make it plan for the future and put aside resources to look after his future. God is telling you that self-drive, leadership is critical for your own continuity. This business of saying that somebody somewhere else is going to look after me will need you to get yourself to have a different Bible and a different Quran. Because by the time you are told, go to the insect, see how it leads its life and wakes up in the morning and is preparing and planning for the future, and it knows that should the flood come, this is how I will survive the flood. Did you know that these insects here, when the flood is as high as 1 meter, the insects are somewhere there. When the flood disappears, they come out. They come out. And God is telling us, go to the insect and learn and see how they don't need to be woken up. He says they have no ruler. They have no supervisor to wake them up. They just wake up themselves and just know that it's time to jointly go and look for a meal somewhere. And when they get a big meal, which requires 40 of them to lift it and bring it home, they don't go and eat it the other side. The corruption and the work ethics we're talking about. You are hungry. You have gotten a meal the other side. Don't eat it there. Start lifting it. Work on that thing until it reaches the store. Once it is at the store, go and look for another one. Work ethics. Africa needs to read the Bible in its fullness. Because here is a continent today, and I must say, it's a bit of good news, but also a bit of bad news. It's a continent where today we're thinking that if you are to solve the challenges and the poverty in the continent, more handouts. But here is the message. When you read the story of the talents, the fellow who made 5 to become 10 was thanked and promised more. Why? Because his capability went up. The fellow who had 2 and they became 4, given the same promise and same favor like the fellow who made 5 to become 10. The fellow who made 1 to remain 1 was abused, was kicked out to the darkness, and where there was pain and wailing. What am I driving at here? We need to reach a point where Africans realize that whatever resources you get through inheritance, because this is our continent, through handouts from government, if you have no ability to make those resources to expand, and that's the minimum yardstick, what you got yesterday has it expanded in your hands. Do you know what we normally say? I had school fees to pay. I had a relative who was sick. I used the resources. That story has no room for excuses. It's simply saying, look after all your needs, but I want the resource of yesterday to have expanded. Why? Anybody who accesses resources and has no ability to expand those resources must lose all the extra resources they received to the level of their ability or worse. Worse because the good book says, he who had little and could not expand the little, even the little they had, should be removed and given to the other party that had the ability to keep resources expanding. This continent must stop the easy way of looking at the Bible and the Quran and picking the easy verses. You know, God is saying, seek ye first my kingdom, and all else will be added. Then you go and fold your hands. How do you reconcile that with Proverbs 24 from verse 30 to 33, which says, I went around a garden of a lazy, stupid man, and I found it overgrown with weeds and thorns. And when I looked at it again, I said, oh my God, this lazy, stupid man is lazy and stupid. He also oversleeps, and when he's awake, he's folding his hands. He said, when he saw these 4 things, he said, I'm giving you number 5 to make sure that either you wake up or you're out of the planet. He said, I will send you poverty that will attack you like an armed robber. The continent is endowed. The continent is a place of opportunity. The continent is a place of riches. If we do not convert those resources into improving solutions for the globe, we must lose them. For now, today, we are taking ourselves to be slaves in other countries. There will come a time, investors from those countries will come and do it again here, and we will be taking any job. Whether you are being paid $10 a month, you take it. Do you know, for a politician, he will be simply saying, at least 99% of my people are employed, but at what price? It will happen right here, because God's principles are unbreakable. I gave you a resource. Have you improved it?
Interesting. You know, I am smiling, but Charles, these are issues that will call for us to weep. We are talking of a continent which has 60% of its entire mass of land being arable. A continent that has 90% of the entire raw materials in the world, 40% of gold reserves, and indeed 33% of diamond reserve of the world, and 95% of platinum.
Yeah, which is the drive of technology today, in telephones and everything else.
And what are we missing? We have 99% of us who are either reading the Quran and reading the Bible. What are we missing? Has religion helped us or not?
It's interesting because religion is such an interesting driver out of slumber, but it can also be a comfort zone for hiding your laziness. The moment something bad has happened, whom do you blame? Satan. Oh, it was Satan. You know, I would have gotten my customers. I would have done this. Why didn't you wake up early? Your contract has been cancelled and you're attributing to Satan. Put in effort. Look for results. Look for serving a customer. If all this you have done them, then you might as well say, God, I did my best. But you've not put in effort. There are no results you are talking about. There's nobody who's happy about what you are trying to do. And then you are quickly going for the easier thing. It's Satan. Or, even better, it was God's plan. And the moment an African puts that statement, what they are trying to tell you is, please do not come and criticize my laziness. I'm a Christian. I am a Muslim. I know my Allah. I know my God. At that point, you put a shield to even resources that would have come to change you. So we need to remove this veneer of using religion to shed off, or to cut off, or to hide our laziness, and begin to confront this thing the way it is. And that's why the good book again says, if you love your child and this child is errant, please pick the road. Don't spare it. The politics of today is all about, please, this is a voter, that's a voter, don't talk to them like that. That's a voter. Just tell them that we will get for them seeds. Last season, you supplied them seeds. They planted. They did not do the weeding. What were they saying? You gave us seeds, but you didn't give us money for weeding. You gave us money for weeding, but you didn't give us money for harvesting. This is fellow. You, as a leader, you have actually killed a population. And not only have you killed one population, you have killed this current population, plus the children who are now watching and seeing what mommy is doing, and now mommy is talking. Mommy's talk is all the time, you know, our leaders have promised us seeds. Our leaders have promised us school fees. Trouble. And that's where the continent of Africa has had a big challenge. They have assumed the fact that there's a straight line between handouts and cheap capital and upkeep and success of a population. And what they do when things are getting out of hand, put a Minister of Health on a plane, send him to Japan with photos about children who need vaccination. In this age and era, you are still looking for somebody outside in Japan to give you vaccines, look after the basics. Really? And you want to be able to run a continent that taps into all these resources. It can't happen.
If you are watching us, this is the Religion and Enterprise Television, and we are talking about the role of religion or faith-based institutions in the promotion and development of our continent, particularly within the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. And we've been privileged to be speaking to the CEO or the Executive Director of Enterprise Uganda, a man that needs no introduction in Uganda, a man that needs no introduction within the enterprise development ecosystem. Mr. Charles Ocici, my very good friend in the country of Uganda. And we are discussing issues that are pertinent to our development as a continent. And I'm going to go back to you, Charles. And, you know, it's been an interesting conversation with you. And it's always exciting, you know, engaging you because, like I always tell you, you speak from your heart. And one of the things that I've been saying is that you live what you practice. My question to you is, when is your book coming out?
That's the surprise one. But the truth is, frankly speaking, Doctor, if there is one constant request I've always received from the audience, a book.
Absolutely.
Because people just feel that this is not something that you need to pick for yourself. Pick it and pass to whoever you can pass it to. And I've committed myself that the moment we're through with our mega project of constructing the infrastructure for the continent, one of the things I'm going to commit to is writing a book.
Very important. Because you see, well, very important, Charles, because I mean, you need to sit back and watch this piece and you understand, you know, the issues that you have brought out, which are very fundamental to the things that we are talking about. And I think, most Africans don't write.
That's true.
We don't write. And so we pass on we talk, but we don't leave something as concrete as we're talking about here. So yes, the building is key. But believe you me, what has made you be able to construct that building, people must know. And for generations yet unborn. Just now, let's talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the Africa 2063, the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. You and I know that no matter what we do, private sector development, business development, plays a critical role in this. There's a school of thought that says that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, for example, the main beneficiaries are going to be the mega businesses that are not indigenously owned because they don't have the muscle to do the intertrade that we are talking about here. So the question I'm putting to you, being in the center space of enterprise development, is this. What do you expect to be the critical role that enterprise leaders, policymakers, and governments need to play? What kind of arrangement or policy direction kind of arrangement would you recommend to ensure that our indigenous African-owned enterprises can become critical players or key players in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in that respect?
I see it this way. The continent of Africa, whether one wants it or not, is going to be attractive to mega brands. Absolutely. And that should not be seen from a dark perspective. If anything, we should be able to ask ourselves, how do we use those brands as the anchors for lifting the micro and the peasant population to join the value chain of these big brands? If there's a big brand that is doing good delivery of cooking oil, maybe from sunflower to the rest of the continent and beyond, the sunflower is going to be grown by the farmers and the small and micro business operators. So I want us to work on a situation whereby we deliberately make whichever big brand that comes to this continent to become the anchor of a value chain where so many small business operators begin to see a vehicle, one, for accessing a big market. Because this big brand here has got that presence in the big market. Number two, by linking this kind of a position, these fellows here now become attractive to lending by financial institutions. Why? Because they are seeing a structured sector where they are operating from. And when you do that, you have taken them into the microcredit area, but on business grounds. And as they learn how to follow the principles, that's the third benefit of connecting the big brand and the micro entrepreneurs. The big brand has got minimum standards that must be fulfilled. But that achievement of those minimum standards should not be left as a burden to the big brand. It's the role of government to prepare these fellows to become good planters of certain crop, good deliverers of a certain dried, well-handled produce. All that technical support, we get the principles from the big brand, then government pays the price of getting these fellows to uplift the operations. In other words, the African continent does not need to reinvent everything. There will be people who come to this continent because it makes a lot of business sense. Let's use them deliberately by telling them, you are not going to get involved in planting the sunflower yourself as a miller. You want tons and tons of crop. We are going to commit ourselves to get these fellows to deliver that. And for us to confirm that we have done a good job for you, we will tell you that if you are to import the raw material, it will come at this price. If we do it locally here, it's cheaper. We do that, we have hit three things at the same time. You've lifted the business acumen of these fellows, you have made these fellows credit worthy, and you have given these fellows a solid market. What a beautiful way of getting the continent to move very fast.
I like what you have just described. And of course, like you earlier said, it's easier said than done. And that is where I think that there's a critical discussion that needs to start between policymakers, between government, and between the local enterprises that you are talking about. Why am I saying this? Let's take our friends from China, for example. You see a Chinese man come to Africa, build a huge hotel, and says, I'm into the hospitality business. The next time we hear the same Chinese company may not be the same owners of the hotel, but another Chinese company has come into town and they are producing maize, they are producing cows, they are producing tomatoes in the villages. So the hotel which has been put up by the Chinese company, huge as you may call it, they don't buy anything from the local people because their own other Chinese companies are producing all the value chain products that they are looking for. And so this is, I mean, like I said, I like the description that you have given, but should there be a critical discussion between policymakers, for example, and involving people like you, people like the business leaders who are feeling the pain of these things, for governments to understand that the discussion has to change in favor of the local markets or the local entrepreneurs, but also to make sure that they feed into the bigger brands that have come up.
It's a very good observation in there, and that's why I keep on saying, I think in the beginning of this conversation, I said time is running out for the continent. People are going to come to this country or to this continent, and they will be saying, we want to deliver the products that are available or potential available in this continent to the outside world. Yes. They will try and work with the locals, and then they discover, oh my God, quality, unreliability, promises, temporary success and disappear. All those will quickly tell the man, you know what? It would have been good for me to work with the locals because I get integrated. I have not come here to be seen to be working with the locals. I've come here to deliver a product which is competitive in a global stage. Whatever you have done, is your product going to compete with Brazil? Is it going to compete with South Korea? If it doesn't, bring the Chinese quickly, or else leave Uganda. Now, that catches us in a catch-22. As a continent, as we get these fellows to come in, let us put resources to use these fellows as temporary gateways. Why is that temporary? The point is this, whatever this brand is doing, do you know that these fellows that we are building, 2, 3, 5 years, they will begin to do the same thing. And they will have much more integration and culture than this fellow. But for the time being, go on with him. But at the same time, deliberately build the local enterprise. And the word is build. Not to just say, here is cheap money, go and buy the technology. You can buy all the technology you want to get. Technology on its own, does not deliver the solution.
So in other words, there should be intentionality.
Intentionality, and that takes me to one thing. Politicians should now begin to see enterprise development as not a quick fix thing. It is hard to create a brand that will rival these finished overseas brands in 3, 4, 5 years. Have a 15-year horizon and work on your fellows. Within a very short time, these fellows here will find it very difficult to compete. And there's an example in the country of Uganda. In a city called Masaka, you go to Masaka in Uganda, you can hardly see any Asian-owned business there. The locals have filled everything. Whatever solutions that are needed in Masaka, the locals have been able to do it. Without a law. The other fellows just found it hard to compete there. And those locals have also moved on beyond Masaka and they have come in the city of Kampala. It gives us a picture. Walk to Masaka, drive through Masaka, highly vibrant city.
One of my favorite towns. Whenever I'm going, I'm passing
just
through.
Get more close.
I like the vicinity, the serene atmosphere of Masaka.
Exactly.
I like it.
So it tells you that it's possible to create great brands, but you don't need this kind of horizon that's pegged to an election cycle. 4 years, 5 years. Please be courageous as a politician. Put a 15-year horizon. If the next person comes and changes, that's their choice.
I'm sure the politicians, not only in Uganda, but on the African continent, they are saying, who is this man who is trying to...
And that's the reality.
If you have just joined us, this is the Religion and Enterprise television, where we discuss issues to do with our continent because we believe that Africa indeed is the future of the world. Now, for us to become that brand, that future of the world, a lot of things need to change. A lot of things need to be improved. One of which is the role of faith-based institutions on the continent. Why? Because we believe that everybody in Africa, at least 99% of them, are religious, either in the church or in the mosque. So if we are talking about the changing of attitudes, paradigms, human nature, and all of that, we need to look at what role these institutions can play. And today we are privileged to have the Executive Director of Enterprise Uganda, a man that needs no introduction in Uganda, Mr. Charles Ocici, who has been so gracious enough to espouse a lot of these principles that we've been talking about. And in my final discussion with you, Charles, we've talked about it, the role of religion. We've also talked about the role of policy, enterprise development, and all of that. By 2050, or by 2063, our leaders, political leaders, have come up with a grand strategy that says Agenda 2063. Already, 30 years is gone. 10 years is gone. Let me put it that 10 years is gone. We've entered into the next phase of the 10 years. Are you hopeful that we can achieve that strategic objective? And if we can, knowing that we have a continent that almost everybody knows something about God. And like we have mentioned, our application and implementation of religious principles have been a bit of misguided.
Yes.
What do you have to tell us, or from your experience, what do you expect to be the critical role, and I'm emphasizing the point, critical role of religious leaders in business transformation, in driving the agenda for Agenda 2063, and in all the things that we have talked about here? What do you expect the religious leaders, both Islam and Christianity, and of course the other Asian religions that have come to Africa?
Yes. Let me say this. In the African continent, there is a reverence that people give to religious leaders. When a religious leader speaks, literally, his words are taken 100%. So that is something that you can ride on. There are not very many countries in this world where that is prominent. It is prominent right here in the continent of Africa. A bishop, a pastor, an imam will speak and it's done. So we need to take advantage of that kind of respect that the population is giving to our leaders. And we do that by first and foremost beginning to teach our religious leaders to have religion, to have something beyond just preparing people to go to heaven. It's great to head to heaven, but as we head to heaven, you should have also lived a dignified life right here. That glorifies the Allah, that glorifies the God that you serve. So we need to get to a point where our religious leaders begin to see the power of an empowered population. And empowered on a sustainable basis. This empowerment where you kind of tell people that come for your miracle, it is not the way to create a population that will take its space in economic empowerment of the continent of Africa. So yes, the religious leaders are respected and they sit at a place of opportunity, and that opportunity, we need to swing that pendulum so that people begin to see that the leaders are now beginning to speak things of development. They are beginning to see things that will make a household to say, what I had today from my pastor, from my priest, from my imam, I need to wake up and take charge of all this. How come I've been giving in my tithe in my church on a weekly basis only 10,000? Isn't that criminal? Isn't that wrong? I should be giving this week 10,000. The next week I should be on 20. But where is it coming from? Is it out of manipulation or is it out of abundance of success? And you just say, I made it and I'm the happiest. I managed to move my business from a certain level to a certain degree. Now I'm taking 10% with happiness to my church, to my mosque. That to me is a key point. In other words, let's reorientate our religious leaders to embrace transformation of society as part of their own calling.
Would you advocate for a much closer collaboration between government and religious leaders? Something like a dialogue, sort of. And if you agree to that assertion, what kind of capacity development do you recommend for religious leaders?
A religious leader will be able to achieve some of the things that we're talking about, provided the political space is equally conducive. So invariably, a religious leader must see himself as a catalyst for creating a leadership for the country that creates general and long-term success of the population. So such a leader should not be a leader who will be saying, if I spoke like this, I might be denied a vehicle for my own movement. He should be able to say, I'm doing this for the love of the population, and that population is a population that votes for you. Let's make this population to succeed. So leaders must be candid. Leaders must be able to speak and be consistently speaking what they believe in, so that they can be seen as people who are not simply trying to state certain messages for their own benefits, which is happening in some extent in some of our religious leaders.
Interesting. Charles, this is the lead camera here. You and I have been in this space for more than 2 decades. And the issues that we have observed across the continent are not unsolvable. These are issues that can be solved. These are issues that are largely human nature. Here you are with 1.2 billion people of the whole continent. And we are saying that Africa is the future of the world. And you know, and I believe that it's not just going to be by prayer. It's not just going to be by going to the mosque. A lot of hard work has to go in. And in doing so, you have a population that has majority of us, almost close to about 70% being young people. So I want you to cast your mind down to 2063, the Africa we want. And see yourself as a grandfather with all these young people ahead of you. Look in this camera and give them your parting words from your heart.
As I speak to the continent of Africa, I want to say a few things clearly here. That the continent of Africa is at its turning point. A time when everybody is saying the precious resources the world needs today, they exist in the continent of Africa, both mineral and as well as human resources. Now, if that is the picture, Africa must position itself quite urgently to make sure that if it's to tap into this opportunity, whoever is coming into this continent should find Africans ready to become joint venture business partners, as opposed to just people who are looking for jobs. That does not come out easy. That is not something that you wish. You don't even just legislate and it happens. It calls for hard work. Work that says we are going to change the continent right from the way people think about their continent. Because it's not just about resources put in the hands. The great religious books are saying the thinking must be aligned, the talking must be aligned, the heart must be aligned. All those are things that we must begin to work on. And now, working on these things is not what you call a quick fix. These are things that require you to come up with policies, programs that are of a long-term nature. And just be ready to know that it's going to be much more difficult for you to achieve this transformation because it takes a lot of convincing. It takes a lot of examples for human beings to say, oh, if somebody can move from a micro-entrepreneur and in 5 years they are enjoying those kind of resources, I think I can also do it. So as a continent of Africa, I know we have concentrated on infrastructure. We have also concentrated on trying to look for credit for the population. Let's now go and address the real thing. The business acumen, the technical skills, the ability of Africans to start businesses like any other human being and make those businesses to become competent solution givers in the continent, exporting good resources out there, but also attracting joint venture partners on merit, and then giving us the taxes and giving us the kind of foreign currency that every government is looking for. In effect, I'm talking about business development services becoming a signature solution we must begin to embrace. We are lucky that there's a UN program called the Empretech program that I and Dr. Deitumi are part of the product of. There is no product as powerful that delivers solutions that truly create entrepreneurs that achieve in Africa like they would have achieved in any other part of the globe.
This is the Legend Enterprise Television, ladies and gentlemen, and you've been part of a discussion from a very noble man of Uganda, Mr. Ocici, Executive Director of Enterprise Uganda. All we are saying is this: Africa indeed is the future of the world. Now, for that to happen by 2063, as the Africa Agenda 2063 is about, all of us need to change the way we do things now. It's not going to happen because we are Christians. It's not going to happen because we are Muslims. It's only going to happen because we put our heart, our head, and our hands to hard work. And that is the only way that is going to happen. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, Charles. And I cannot thank you enough for the beautiful words that you have used here today. And believe you me, this is going to go a long way to change many, many lives on the continent. Ms. Ocici.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Always.
Thank you
so
very
much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Africa needs you.